I was getting headaches and I thought I needed to drink more coffee. And I realized that I needed to stop coffee entirely because what my nervous system was frying, right? And I didn't know, but then as soon as I came off the coffee, I started feeling like dramatically better. And so people don't realize this kind of creeps up on you because coffee, there's tolerance, there's withdrawal to it, the headaches, there's dependence on it, obviously, right? And then you're screwing up your adenosine system, but you're also screwing up some neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and epinephrine and even your cortisol, right? Which going to increase as well so you have to be careful. But the nice thing is coffee does also have polyphenols. So it's got polyphenols, it's got antioxidants. And so it's nice that it's got a little bit of both. So I'm cool with it, but I really try to, regulate my patient's energy without those things as much as possible.
Hello and welcome back to the Evolving Wellness Podcast. My name is Sarah. Today I have Dr. Scott here with me, and this was a conversation spurred out of just him reading my newsletter, reading some of the work I've been putting out there on Substack. So make sure you head to the show notes to subscribe, grab all that new content when it comes out. But just a piece I had done about the vagus nerve and why something even like a vagus nerve stimulation could cause havoc in the wrong person with the wrong terrain, with the wrong nervous system. And so Scott and I got to talking over text and just decided to sit down, film an episode, and really dive deeper into this to help people understand really how this works, how nervous system regulation, how cell danger response in general actually translates over to a therapy being incredibly helpful for you or potentially not doing what you think it's going to do. So fun conversation. Hope you enjoy it. All of Dr. Scott's info down in the show notes. And of course, make sure you head on over to my Substack. I'm going to be putting out a lot more great articles over there in the upcoming months and goodies. So I'd love to stay in touch that way. And I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Evolving Wellness Podcast, where circadian biology and quantum biology meet nutrition, lifestyle, hormones, health, and everyday conversations. I'm your host, Sarah, board certified in applied quantum biology by the American Naturopathic Medical Board and certified in nutrition by the National Academy of Sports Medicine. This is just a quick little reminder that you'll never hear a guest on this podcast whose every stance I agree with. And that's the point. These are conversations and not consultations. The information shared here is for information and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of a qualified, trusted professional for all of your personal health needs. If you want more of my content, including my free long-form articles with citations, free ebooks, membership group with more access to me and my Circadian app that helps you integrate light into your life seamlessly, make sure to visit www.sarahkleinerwellness.com. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Super excited to have Dr. Scott here back on. He's been on a few other episodes. I'll make sure those are linked down in the show notes. We've talked about a lot about methylene blue, but I thought you thought today would be fun to talk about or interesting to talk about what you just coined as the sympathetic spiral of doom. Maybe that'll be the name, the episode name.
It's a good title. It's kind of an ominous one, but it's one that I think brings together a lot of things that you talk about all the time, Sarah, and that I talk about all the time with my patients. And so I'm an internal medicine physician, but I have my own integrative practice outside of Boulder, Colorado. And I've been in clinical practice now for over 20 years. And it's one of those things where when you start talking to people and you start understanding where they're coming from, you realize very quickly if you're going to be able to help them easily, if it's going to be like a one or two kind of thing, or if it's going to be something that's going to take a lot longer. And the sympathetic spiral of doom is one of the things that I've now come to understand is happening in so many people, which is really making it very difficult for them to heal. Everybody wants to feel better. Everybody wants to feel better tomorrow. But it's one of those things where it can take a while to really recover, 6 months, a year, longer, because, it took you 40 or 50 years or however old you are to get to where you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's, you're like in a place where things are not, all hope is lost. That's not the case. But it's this spiral that I'm happy to describe that many of us are in now, that we can learn to address in a very, sequenced way, now and also long term.
Yeah, I think it's such a relevant conversation because I'm doing more private coaching and more groups and just getting people with these intake forms that come to me. And I'm talking with my co-coach, and so many people are very depleted, mineral depleted. Diet is depleted.
Sure.
And they're overstressed, and they're in this kind of sympathetic like state. And they are coming to me, I want to feel better. I want to lose weight. I need to drop 40 pounds. I need to, I'm like, yes, we can. But there's what I call kind of a containment and replenishment time that needs to happen. And of course, they want to know a timeline for that. And I'm like, let's just give it some time, because you're going to feel better in that containment and replenishment time period. You likely will, but let's not lose the forest for the trees, if that makes sense.
100%, because everybody wants to feel better tomorrow, and it's very difficult for you or for me as a practitioner to say, you know what, it's going to take 6 months for you to feel better, right? It's going to take 6 months. If you work with me, like that's a really long road for a lot of people. And so that's really important. That long road is essential, right? And that's really a lot of the work that you do, and I do as well in clinical practice. But the question, I guess, sort of like high level here, is that when you're talking, like, just to kind of reflect one thing you said before I get going, is that like I know within the first 30 seconds to 3 minutes when I talk to somebody, if they're in this sympathetic spiral. And I think it'd be easy, or I think, appropriate now to kind of talk about what this is, right? So when you have, stress, right? This is your sympathetic nervous system, right? Just really briefly, right? You have your nervous system, which has kind of two branches. One, which is called your sympathetic nervous system. One is called your parasympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight nervous system. It's the one that is in vigilance mode. It's the one that keeps you active, that's going to run away from the, proverbial saber-toothed tiger kind of thing. And so the challenge with modern life, though, is that it's not just this saber-toothed tiger that's, chasing you. It is your notifications on your phone. It's poor sleep. It's your kids crying at night. It's your relationships with your partner. It's your job. All these things that are kind of happening that are kind of keeping us in this sympathetic state, more and more of the time. Our default state actually is supposed to be the parasympathetic mode. That's when we rest, digest, detoxify, and heal. But many of us, most of us, the majority at this point really are not spending enough time in that parasympathetic mode to really be able to do those kinds of things. So that's your sympathetic mode. That's your sympathetic activation. Okay. And then the other aspect of this is important, is that when you're in that sympathetic mode all the time, you release lots of neurotransmitters and hormones. So the neurotransmitters we talk about here specifically are epinephrine and norepinephrine, and also you deplete your GABA levels as well. And we've had a whole podcast on GABA as well, talking about how GABA deficiency is associated with anxiety, with insomnia, with depression, much more than, serotonin levels for sure. And so in addition, there's also the lovely hormone that everybody, vilifies, which is cortisol.
Cortisol.
Yes. Cortisol is really important. It's a hormone that is your stress hormone. We need it. It's what, it's supposed to be elevated when you wake up in the morning, and it's supposed to go down and throughout the day when it's supposed to be the lowest when you go to bed. Cortisol, what it does initially is it actually breaks down fat and gives you sugar so that you can actually start making energy in the morning so you can wake up. And that's what it's for. But the problem with these hormones and these neurotransmitters, if they're on all the time, is that your mitochondria, the part of your cell that makes energy, is on all the time trying to make energy in response to all these factors. And as a result of that, the mitochondria are, they're making energy, but they don't just make energy. They make what are called, waste products in quotes. They make carbon dioxide, they make water. ATP is your energy currency. And also reactive oxygen species, your ROS. And over time, what happens is if you're making energy all the time, your body cannot actually neutralize that stress from making energy all the time. And so your mitochondria go into this place, it's called the cell danger response, which I'm sure you've discussed as well, Sarah. And the cell danger response is this response that the mitochondria are trying to protect themselves. And what happens is they start making less energy. And as a result of this less energy, there's not enough energy around. And then your sympathetic nervous system gets even more revved up because it's like, I need more energy and I'm not making enough. Yeah. And then you go in this spiral. So that's when the sympathetic nervous system is activated. But it can happen this sympathetic spiral, not only from just that sympathetic activation, but it could actually happen directly from something happens directly to your mitochondria. So you may not have a sympathetic response initially, but if your mitochondria are stressed from infections, from toxins in your environment, from being insulin resistant, so your blood sugars are too high, from medications even that you're taking on a regular basis, all these things can directly impact your mitochondria, cause mitochondrial stress, and then as a result of that, they have the same reaction to that. And as a result of that same reaction, they go into that cell danger response kind of thing. And then they can't make enough energy. And then the sympathetic nervous system starts revving up at the same time because the system's like, I need more energy. So all of a sudden you're in this place where you have sympathetic activation, you have mitochondrial dysfunction, and whether it started sort of, I call it like top down, like outside the body, or inside the body, like bottom up in the mitochondria, you're in this loop where all of a sudden things aren't going so well anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like this is most of the people that come to me because, and you can tell from talking to them, I can tell from an intake form.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, here we are. And I know also because I've been there, it's the modern world and our lifestyles and our diets and the environment, light environment included, sets us up to go into this, what I call conservation mode, what other people might call cell danger response. It's just, you have to make a conscious effort in your life to make actual changes in order to not stay in this perpetual state. I would say a lot of the majority of people really are, Yeah.
What I would say here too is that it's really important to understand that when you have the sympathetic spiral going on, it's mitochondrial dysfunction. So what it means is you're not making enough energy. That's that cell danger response, right? And also you're this in sympathetic overload, so that some of the symptoms you might feel like you can't recover as well anymore from anything you do, whether it be exercise, travel, like a difficult day at work. You just might feel like it just takes like 2 or 3 days or longer to get better. You might feel tired but wired. You might feel like your mood is kind of all over the place. It might be like you have a good mood, and then all of a sudden you're like, your lability is like you're up and you're down, you're up and you're down. Your energy levels are kind of up and down throughout the day, and you just don't. It's not one of those things that kind of happens overnight. It typically happens over a longer period of time. Although, when perimenopause comes around for women, it can be more pronounced, as I know many of your listeners know. The key here to understand, though, is that if you just try to like relax your nervous system here, it's not going to be the only thing that you can do, or the only thing you should do, because if you're relaxing your nervous system, and you still have a lot of mitochondrial dysfunction, there's not enough energy being made, for example, you're still going to feel, quite terrible is what it comes down to. And then in addition, when you're coming down on the nervous system's activation, the other aspect of this is important, is that you can have a reactive anxiety when your nervous system starts coming down, because you're used to working at such a high tension level that when you come down from that tension level, that clamp down level, you're going to have this sort of like reactive anxiety to not being in that hypervigilance anymore. So it's what I found to be really important is to really support, both ends of the spectrum at the same time. Like if you just downregulate the nervous system without supporting mitochondria, you see these kinds of reactions. If you just work on the mitochondria without working on the sympathetic nervous system, this is when maybe one of the few ways I agree with the conventional doctors that would say, like, if you're taking supplements, you're just making yourself expensive urine. And I'd be like, well, actually, in this case, yeah. Like if you're not downregulating that if you're not working on the downregulating nervous system, while you're optimizing the mitochondria at the same time, you're also not going to see much benefit. And I've had patients like this. I've had patients where I've worked with them 6 months or a year, even longer. I've gotten better at understanding this over the years, but especially initially, where I'm like, why is this person not getting better? Why is their gut not improving? Why are their metabolites not optimized? Like, we're working on their diet, they're taking the right supplements, they're on the right GI cocktails, but it's because they're so clamped down, and as a result of that sympathetic nervous system being activated.
Yeah, exactly. And the body, we have to get them out of that mode, but also support them in that as well. So it's not just as simple as go listen to some meditation,
Yeah.
YouTubes.
Like, tell somebody that's really nervous just to calm down, right? Like that's
Right.
like the worst thing you can do to a partner, right? Is like tell your partner to calm down. Like that works, right?
Or a 3-year-old.
Or well, 3-year-olds are a different animal. Yeah. Yeah. What you have to do with a 3-year-old, by the way, Sarah, is completely distract them.
Yeah.
Make it so that there's no relevance to what you're doing to what they just did. And I'm talking, I have 4 kids, right? So my experience with a 3-year-old, for those that are listening, the three-nager stage is just do the complete opposite of what they think you're going to do, right? Like if they're trying to get you angry, start laughing hysterically, like, or just something like start rolling on the floor and like pounding, like, doing your own temper tantrum, like just making a scene with the 3-year-old works, I'm telling you. But you're telling a 3-year-old to calm down does not work either.
No, not at all. It's very unhelpful. So
Yeah. So what I would say here is that if you're thinking about this in a kind of like a larger context, there are ways to help you right now. And I think that's what's important, right? But I know Sarah, and I have some ideas here of what I use for people. I can use methylene blue to help with the mitochondria, actually, for example, which is a great way to support this. And I'm happy to talk about that. I can also use things that help downregulate the nervous system using the GABAergic neurotransmitter system, which is how the GABA system is the brakes of our brain and very depleted in these kinds of people, and a lot of us, right? Because again, GABA deficiency associated with anxiety, depression, insomnia, and tremors and all the things. So I can use those things, and I typically do. But I know you talk a lot about how diet, lifestyle, and ways to sort of do that. What's that bridge for you, Sarah? Like, because I was interested as I was reading some of your recent blogs about this, because I certainly want people to get better light. I want them to time their meals better. But like sometimes it can be hard to sort of like get out of the gate, like get it like, and that's where I think I can use supplementation to really help people. I don't know. What your thoughts are to kind of get them, out there, outside, like making those first couple steps. Do you have like what are your sort of like magic ways of doing that?
if you're not new to my work, you already know the importance of sunlight in your daily life. But what if you have to work in an office all day long? How can you offset some of that blue light? Now, the work of Professor Glenn Jeffrey shows that preconditioning your body with red and infrared light before going into a blue lit environment actually helps your mitochondria buffer the stress of that environment. And I would recommend anyone who works in an office or has to be indoors a lot this winter to have a source of red and infrared on their desk with them. That is why I absolutely love this Bond Charge mini red light panel. And I keep it here on my desk while I'm working in my office and recording videos for you guys. And they've given me a discount for all of my listeners. All you have to do is go to the Bond Charge website, which I'll put down in the show notes for you, and use the code Sarah Kleiner for everything on the site. You can get 15% off. But if you want to get this little Bond Charge red light mini panel, this is really my favorite tool for anybody who has to work in an office and has to offset some of this blue light, because let's be realistic. We can't just quit our jobs and move, even though we might want to. So learning how to live in the modern world and mitigate it is going to be extremely helpful. And the research is there to show that red and infrared light is immensely helpful if you're in a blue lit environment. Head to bondcharge.com and check out the mini red light panel. Use the code Sarah Kleiner, all one word, to save 15% off. There will be a link down in the show notes. Well, I mean, it has to start with the body knowing what time of day it is and what time of year it is and being synced up to the light and dark cycles. Because if we're looking at the nervous system, if you literally don't know what time of day it is, your body doesn't know, then how on earth is the nervous system is supposed to find any regulation to begin with? And so I think people don't really realize how out of sync they are and how much they're flattening their entire circadian curve, because we can look at the circadian rhythm as kind of like this amplitude, like that cortisol curve, right? It's supposed to come online, and then at night it's supposed to come down to melatonin comes online. Most people are scrolling in bed, they're keeping their rhythm just completely flat all the time. And it's similar to just kind of keeping your cortisol flat all the time.
It's exactly, yeah.
And so simple thing is in the morning, really reinforcing those circadian cues. And that's going to look like just going outside as soon as you wake up. I think minerals and hydration are just such a big piece of this because your mitochondria need minerals in order to make energy, right? In order to make ATP, to make water, all these things, they need minerals. And so I'll typically have people do a mineral loading protocol with, I use Ketones a lot of the time. Usually start with isotonic because those are a lot more gentle.
Sure.
Hypertonic can be too activating for some people.
You get the glass bottles, the glass things?
I buy the big ones on full script.
You buy the big ones, yeah. I just don't like the glass. I like that it's in glass, but it's like I've
the vials are annoying, and I've cut my finger on those so many times. So
yeah,
I'll tell
you get the big
people
ones from full script. Okay, yeah.
I just get the big ones from full script. I have a Ketones budget in my every month because we all drink it. I just add it to all of our water.
It's a line item. I like that. Yeah.
It's got trace minerals. It's got everything that you need, really. Not everything, but it's essential for energy production for mitochondria. And so we all take it. And I think that's a really important thing, an easy thing people can do. I don't love to slam people with a bunch of supplements, but that morning window, really reinforcing the circadian rhythm in the morning, getting minerals up on an empty stomach, hydration, and then reinforcing the circadian rhythm with protein, with food, with high quality, like leptin signaling, because all these things, I see nervous system dysregulation also happening in leptin resistance, which leptin resistance is highly tied to the nervous system as well. There's a lot of interesting research on that.
Right.
So I'm like, let's get the signaling back online. We don't need to worry about what number your leptin is, if it's high, if it's low. It's the signal. Like, does your brain know how much energy it has available? Because if your brain doesn't know how much energy is available, it's kind of the same thing. Your body doesn't know what time it is. Your brain doesn't know how much energy is available. So how the heck is it supposed to be efficient, energy efficient, or otherwise? Like, how are things actually supposed to even work if we don't have these very basic fundamental things online? So those are it's usually morning, and then in the evening, looking at getting to bed earlier, putting the phone down, get off the doom scroll, which is tough for people to do, but
it is hard. Yeah.
It's really important if you want to get the system more regulated.
I love that. So this is like your low hanging fruit would be circadian rhythm alignment, hydration, and then meal timing are the main ones, right? And I think those are great. And I think one of the things I always had a question about, what are your thoughts about, we don't live in El Salvador like some people, right? We don't live in places where we get sun.
Though. That's a whole other topic. But
that's another topic. Yeah.
I'm an H2. I shouldn't be living in a high UV environment.
Right.
My skin wasn't built for it. My mitochondria weren't built for it. 100%.
Yeah, so I appreciate you making that comment. Yeah,
I don't think we all should.
Agree. Like skin tone and our ancestry is a big part of this, right? How much sun exposure we're supposed to have and different times of year and things like that. Right. What is I have one of the sun lamps in one of my closets right behind me. Do you typically recommend those in patients that or in clients that may not have as much sun exposure in the wintertime, even if it's something that's more aligned with their ancestry anyway, or is your sense that that's not really necessary?
I think it can be necessary, really, because, especially if you have more melanin in your skin, if you are more of an equatorial haplotype, and let's say you're living in Canada or Michigan or just somewhere that's really cold and dark and gloomy, you're not going to be getting the type of light that your mitochondria expect. I think mitochondria have memory, and I think that they are expecting a certain amount of UV. That's going to be difficult for that person to live in that environment. And I think it's an overlooked thing. They're not getting the amount of UV that their body really expects to get with the amount of melanin they have in their skin. So if you're a highly melanated person, I do think you should have some sort of UV. I like the UVB lamp. I did a whole Substack on tanning beds, UV lamps, UVB dominant with some UVA, not a typical tanning bed that's like UVA dominant with a little bit of UVB, because really it's, vitamin D is a big part of it. And you should always pair that with a source of red and infrared, because I think the missing infrared in our environments is hugely overlooked when it comes to mitochondrial health, metabolism, health in general. When you look at Dr. Glenn Jeffrey's work and all the amazing things he's doing right now, I think bare minimum, everyone should have a lamp with an incandescent bulb on their desktop if they're working at it in an office, definitely. So those people, yes. And then for people like me, that's an H2, I go out in the sun in the summer. I'm laying out as soon as it's a 70-degree sunny day. I'm laying out naked in my backyard. I just do. I have good privacy back there, but I'm back there, as often as I can be. And I don't burn my skin. I have my Circadian app, so I know kind of like, oh, you've had enough, go inside, or go in the shade, stay outside, but go in the shade. Most people aren't doing that, though. Most people are living their life 90% of the time indoors or more.
Right.
And so they go into winter already deficient,
depleted,
light deficient, UV deficient, depleted. So, loading up on vitamin D supplements isn't going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
There can be a time and a place for that, I think, but that shouldn't be the first thing that people reach for, in my opinion.
Yeah, what I love about your approach is actually kind of what I talk about a lot too, which is a sequenced type of approach, right? So if you just try to work on your stress without working on some of these sort of foundational things, you're not going to see the benefits because you're not going to feel good. You don't have those foundational things in place. And it just and this is a big component for people where I think if you can find that mitochondrial support first, and that's really what you're talking about really is getting the mitochondria more in line with your biology, with your biochemistry. And there's a couple different ways that I think about this too. I like to look at metabolomic testing. I like to look at vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and cofactors. I know that you've done some genetic things too, which is interesting, help as a way to correlate that. And I think looking at, what you actually need can be really, really helpful, right? Because you can look at, so we have a whole nonprofit organization that trains practitioners. It's called Health Optimization Medicine. And we do is we teach people how to use metabolomic testing as a way to optimize, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, cofactors, gut health, neurotransmitters, hormones, and things like that. And it's great. It's really important. And I think it'd be very helpful. But that's a long-term play, right? It doesn't happen immediately. And then you'll often see if you can get somebody doing some of these lifestyle factors and things that you're discussing, you can see these shifts even before. Yeah, you can see the corrections without even doing anything or with doing very little. And then what you can see, what we can do over time is, and I think what you've done, Sarah, is you're doing all the things, right? And then you can do the testing, and that's ideal, right? Because then you can kind of see, okay, I've optimized my circadian rhythm. I worked on my diet, worked on my stress and my lifestyle. Now what else is required, right? Because we also have to remember that these makes and models that we run around with, we weren't supposed to be alive after about 45 or 50 years of age. We would have had our children. They would have been old enough to live on their own. And there would have been 5 or 6 elderly people maybe that lived long enough in a village so that they could maintain culture and stories and things like that. But the rest of us would have been dead. And so we have to remember that evolutionarily, our avatars, our meat suits, whatever you want to call them, we weren't supposed to be around for much longer than that. So I always like to emphasize that if you're going to look at and being as optimized as you can, yes, everything from what we're describing from a diet, lifestyle, circadian rhythm, et cetera, is so important. But looking at under the hood and seeing what's happening long term, with it is also it's also an additional step that can be very, very helpful, because that's. This is what's going to happen naturally as we get older, no matter what, is that we're going to have deterioration in enzymatic function. We're going to have deterioration in our capacity to digest our food, for example. We're going to have deterioration in our hormones. These are natural things, but this is where, hormone replacement is an idea, right? This is where, for women and for men, right? Because testosterone levels in men start dropping around 30. Of course, women have, needs for HRT potentially. I know that you're kind of you're navigating that now as well, Sarah. So I like to kind of put it in context. But what I find, and I'm just interested in your thoughts, is that I have a hard time getting people to do a lot of lifestyle and dietary things before they start feeling a little bit better. And so this is where I've added a lot of very low doses of methylene blue to my regimens for my patients. And I have seen this be a nice way to help, give them a little bit of oomph along the way. And I know you've used this in various ways. I don't know if that resonates at all.
Okay, collagen. And I say this as someone who was extremely skeptical. I've been using it for about 6 months now. I didn't really start it for skin or hair. I started because I was noticing some early joint discomfort last summer, which I suspect was tied to just getting a little bit older and stress levels increasing. Honestly, I've been very surprised. I've actually noticed real improvements in joint comfort, especially with training and day-to-day movement. Now, from a science standpoint, as we age, collagen in our skin and connective tissue declines. Human studies suggest that hydrolyzed collagen peptides, when used consistently, may support joint comfort and lead to modest improvements in skin hydration and elasticity, with some studies actually showing a reduction in the appearance of fine lines after about 8 to 12 weeks. The blend I've been using also includes eggshell membrane, which has human data supporting joint stiffness and mobility. Just keep in mind, collagen is not a magic wand. It works best alongside enough protein and the basics like sleep and recovery. But if you'd like to try the collagen I've been using, go to www.organifi.com/Sarah K and use the code Sarah K for 20% off your order. Again, that's www.organifi.com/Sarah K. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I try to support people in my groups and in, coaching containers and things like that, so they have that moral support that they need and they don't feel so alone. Because I think one of the biggest issues that people have is that, my family, my immediate family, my sisters, my mom, people in my immediate environment here where I live think I'm crazy, think the things I do are wild. Like, my sister doesn't understand. I love them so much and I value their relationships, but they don't understand why I hate overhead fluorescent lights so much. They just don't understand. And I've tried to explain it. And at a certain point, I'm like, I just want to hang out. I don't want to talk about all this health stuff. I just want to be with my family,
Yeah, I understand.
And I think the average person coming to me is surrounded by people who are not going to do this stuff and they're going to think they're crazy. And I think that's part of the barrier. So I think having support and having community is so important,
huge,
even if it's virtual. I do see that there, and that's where I use the minerals. I think a lot of people start to feel more energy when their hydration needs are met a little bit better. I do think there can be some use for things like methylene blue. That's where I'll send people to you and your work and the episodes we've done together.
Right.
I use it personally if my kid has kept me up all night, which is like a once a week thing now at this point. It wasn't that much before, but
it'll get better.
Typically, and I've put this in my newsletter before, I'll take methylene blue, wait about a half hour, do some red light therapy. Then if I have even more time, I'll go get in the sauna, sweat it out. Take a Takasumi half hour later, really load up on hydration, hydrogen. Like, I'll just load in a lot of support on myself on those days because I just need it more. But yeah, I'm not against those things. I think they can be helpful. I just, for anyone listening, I'm still like, let's do the foundations first, because then all those other things are going to work so much better. But I can see how if someone's working with you as their doctor and you say, okay, let's give your mitochondria a little support this way, they may have more energy to get outside and do the things and make better meal choices, because everything comes down to energy. I think that's what I had said this morning in my newsletter about the MTHFR that everyone loves to blame for everything.
The motherfucker gene. Yep.
Right? That's what when I found out about that gene, like, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago, I was like, oh, it's a motherfucker gene. But excuse anyone who's sensitive to curse words. But yeah, everyone likes to blame this, but it comes down to your body's energy capacity. And so genetic predispositions may not become an issue for you if you have really great mitochondrial support and you're not stuck in this sympathetic spiral of doom. Like, you may have a bunch of SNPs like I do for obesity, diabetes. Like, I have all kinds of really bad metabolic SNPs, like really bad. But I'm leaner at 46, almost 47 than I was at 17, 18, 19, 20, in my 20s, right? Why? Because I know exactly what to do to take care of my body and my mitochondrial health. So I think those things are important, but just to go back to the original point, it's about energy. Can your body make energy,
Yeah. Everything is energy is what it comes down to. And the statistics are kind of crazy, right? I've mentioned this in previous conversations, but we make about 150 pounds of ATP every single day. And the most energy intensive location in the body, in the female body, it's the eggs and ovaries. And in males, it's the sperm. But just right behind that is the brain and the heart, the liver, the kidneys. The musculoskeletal tissue has the most energy reserve so that you can run away from that, lion or saber-toothed tiger, as we always somehow want to go back to for some reason. In medicine, we always talk about saber-toothed tigers. I don't know why when you learn about things. But so that's a huge amount of energy that we're supposed to be making every single day. And what I found, Sarah, is that methylene blue is a nice bridge. It's a bridge for people that just can't seem to make those first couple steps. And once they start getting a little bit of energy, a little bit more of detox, like a nice thing is like I started adding it to sauna protocols. Red light, of course, because red light synergizes with methylene blue in the same area of the mitochondria. But actually, but sauna is interesting, right? Because sauna is going to cause more detoxification, right? Yep. And what happens with that, because the heat shock proteins go up and you get more energy produced, you get more detoxification. If you don't have enough, detox support and mineral support is really important. But if you don't have some energy support there along the way, which is what methylene blue can do, you might feel kind of tired and groggy and and just like brain fog and terrible. So I've added a little bit of methylene blue to the sauna stack. So it's, methylene blue, 45 minutes or an hour just before an infrared sauna, for example. Like I see my patients, and I've had a couple of colleagues tell me about this too, like their patients feel great when they get out of the sauna. They're taking their antioxidants if needed. They're taking their binders if they need them and things like that, but they're adding the methylene blue. And then that's been a really big lever for them to actually feel, actually recovered and energized after. Because if you have like a lot of garbage in your cells that need to be cleaned up, yes, you need antioxidants for that. And everything we're talking about. But if you just clean that up and there's still no energy being produced or very poor energy production, you're still going to be in a place where you still you might not feel very good at all. And then the statistic of like 94% of U.S. adults being metabolically unhealthy is huge, right? And so that's only 6% of the U.S. population has metabolic health to start off with. It's a big deal, but the goal would be, for my patients at least, and the people that I work with, it's like, if you need more methylene blue to start off with to get you going, great. And then over time, you use it as you do, Sarah, which is as needed when you have more physiologic or psychologic stress, when you're traveling, when you have a long day at work or the office, or, on the other end of it, if you're doing endurance and you need more aerobic capacity, you can use it in that way too. So that's kind of how I see it. And then like the sequence for me would be improve mitochondrial function for a period of time. It may be a couple weeks, maybe longer, depending on the person. And then that's when you start looking at down-regulating the nervous system. As you said, as you're doing the mitochondrial support and then circadian alignment, they're going to start having some of that already, especially if they're sleeping better. But then that's when you give them more of the sympathetic down-regulation support. And this could be like adding in meditation or mindfulness or breath work or whatever. But then again, there's the other aspect of this as well. Like, what are the main inputs that are causing that sympathetic overdrive to start off with, right? Is it trauma when you were a child, right? And this is a big one. I had a patient recently, she had an alcoholic father and she had GI problems since she was 5, right? And I looked at her labs. I'd never seen anything like it, from like just her inability to digest anything.
Wow.
And we talked about it. And I'm like, look, there's certain things we can do now to help you, but if you don't also address this traumatic aspect where you just don't feel safe, there's nothing. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to heal. There's nothing you can do, right? I can do a little bit of things here to help you initially to make you feel a little bit better, but long-term things are not going to improve. So if you've had a sudden death in the family, if you had trauma as a kid, if you have a relationship where, you're stressed every day, all day, or most of the days, this is stuff that needs to be addressed. And I think that's really great where like the support group aspect of things, Sarah, I'm sure is really, really helpful there too.
Yeah, people need that. And I think it's important to see in your environment what you can change. I'm trying to move still. I know I've been talking about it for like 2 years, but I really am still house hunting and trying to find somewhere that's a bit more quiet than where I live now. Because
you can make your own house, right? Don't you have to make your own? Like this is. I know Ben Greenfield. He's famous for like making his own biohacking house.
That would be great.
Yeah. Maybe at some point you can make your own and design your own.
I would love to do that. To do that. Right now, I'm just trying to kind of get out of the busyness of the city, because it is overstimulating. I have a neighbor that is just horrific, like loud. He had a leaf blower going at 10:30 the other night, which is illegal, but he doesn't really think the law applies to him.
Of course.
So you have to look at things like that of sometimes making these harder decisions of maybe I need to have a different environment. I've had clients where their blood sugar will go down to normal when their partner goes on a work trip for a week. It's like, oh, we've been wearing a CGM. You've been in this low level, almost pre-diabetic range, even though we've got the light and the food and all the things. And then your partner goes away for a week and you have great numbers. That's a hard conversation. So sometimes there are hard conversations. Like I was kind of saying earlier, I don't think anyone needs to move to the equator necessarily, but sometimes there are big changes we have to make in order to recover our health.
Yeah, I always like the phrase, wherever you go, there you are. Yeah,
that's the recovery phase. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you have to be aware. So you can change environments.
Geographic change is not going to change. Yeah, and that's a valid point too. That's a conversation I have a lot with other people.
Yeah, I completely validate and agree with what you said. I think it's what I'm just trying to refer here to is that there's a psychology of things, right? Where you can feel better in a different environment for a period of time, but eventually it's going to catch up to you if you haven't addressed some of these things. And one of the big things I see with relationships, Sarah, is a snoring partner actually is a big one. Like if you have somebody that's snoring in bed with you, you are not going to sleep well. Even if you think you're sleeping well, they've actually done studies where the partner's cortisol level rises every time there's a snore, even if they don't wake up during that. And so if you can't have a beautiful and relaxing sleep environment, you need to find a different place to sleep, right? Or a different place for your partner to sleep. This is what is lovingly called the sleep divorce.
Sleep divorce.
There's a more positive term for it now. I can't remember. It's like sleep union or sleep agreement, or
there needs to be a better term for it because it sounds so it's like extreme because you're not actually getting divorced, and it's like, is this going to lead to a divorce because you're not? But I think more people, need to consider that because it is. I have a partner that now he's got an appliance. When he wears the appliance, he doesn't snore. If he doesn't want to wear the appliance, then he's snoring, and I'm like all night, And sometimes it's just more peaceful for me to go sleep with my 3-year-old who inevitably is going to kick me in the ribs or in the head or something at some point.
Welcome to being a family life. Yeah. But the other thing, it's one of those things where I think almost half of U.S. adult partners don't sleep in the same bed anymore.
Wow.
So it's actually a pretty large amount. I know, like, for example, I'm thinking about my parents. My dad would wake up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So my mom didn't want him in bed so that he didn't wake her up at 4 o'clock. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of reasons. There are other like approximations of this too. So like, for example, if your partner doesn't snore, but if they take your covers every night and you're like going there, like freezing, like what you can do is get 2 duvets, like 2 blankets.
And separate them. I know a lot of people that do that. Yeah.
Even 2 beds that are together, like 2 queen mattresses or 2 whatever. And then you just separate them a little bit when you go to bed. And so you have your different sheets, you have different, different, you're sleeping in the same room,
right?
But you're not, sharing and fighting for sheets and covers. So so that can work if your partner's not snoring.
Right.
But if they are, it's time for a different, for something to happen there, right? This is a big deal because like sleep apnea is huge. It's a big problem. I've actually, this is one of the first things I always ask my clients, if they have brain fog, and I ask them if they snore, right? Because if they're snoring at night, what's happening there is that they're becoming hypoxic. So they're not getting enough oxygen. And so as a result of that, their brain is just massively inflamed in the morning. So I've actually used methylene blue. I've used hyperbaric therapy. Other things to help people short term. But if they're not going to get, a lot of times it's weight related, right? So if we can work on the weight, that's going to get better. But like a sleep appliance or, a sleep mask if needed. There are a lot of different, varieties of those now that are a little bit easier for people to tolerate. But it's a big one, right? Because when we talk about sleep, it's kind of like the lever that all of us need to really be able to pull, which is that if you're not sleeping well, nothing else is going to get better either, right? So if you're not sleeping well, you can't regulate your nervous system, your blood sugar is going to be all over the place, and your mitochondria can be all screwed up. And so you're kind of in a place where that's one, I think this is probably one of the first things that you try to address. But for me, if sleep is a big issue for my patients, it's the first thing I go to. I will give them whatever, like not pharmaceuticals, but I will give them, we have a couple things at our company that really work well in the GABA system, like something like Tro plus Somna or Trocom or Troz, which are great. And like these things are, I can get somebody to go to bed. As soon as I can get them to go to bed, everything else is going to get easier too. So like the levers are always interesting, right? But like when somebody is sympathetically activated all the time, getting them to sleep is like
tough.
Number one.
Blue blockers are a highly debated topic in the alternative wellness world. There are a lot of people that say that they don't work and that they're pointless and useless. And I have to agree with that because there are some brands that are pointless, useless, and don't work. When you test them with a spectrometer, they do not block the spectrums of light that they need to block in order to protect your circadian rhythm. So you've got these glasses that are promising to give you a health benefit that don't. So I will agree with some of those people on that point, but I will disagree in that the research is extremely clear. When you look at the spectrum of light that sets the brain up to say, hey, it's daytime, we don't want to have that coming into the eye at night. Viva Rays is the brand I have used and trusted for the last 4 years, actually almost 5 years now, to protect my circadian rhythm because they block the spectrum of light that they actually say they do, the meaningful spectrum of light that signals to the brain that it's daytime. I've tested this personally with a spectrometer, and it's the brand I recommend to clients as well. So if you're looking to upgrade your health this year and get a high quality pair of blue blockers, check out Viva Rays. You can use code YOGI to get extra savings. There's a link down in the show notes. And thank you to Viva Rays for sponsoring today's episode. Sleep is an energy dependent process. Like you need energy to fall asleep and to stay asleep. And so when someone's having issues falling asleep, staying asleep, even when they're doing all the other stuff, I'm like, that's a sign right there that your body's not making enough energy, period. So,
yeah. People think that sleep is this, dead
you're so
state
tired. You just,
but our sleep is very active, right? And so especially REM sleep, if you looked at a brain scan of somebody that's in REM sleep, their brain is as active looking as if you were talking on you and I talking on a podcast right now. This is REM sleep is when we dream, of course, right? And so, but it's not like deep sleep is completely devoid of electrical activity either, but certainly REM sleep is elevated. And I actually find, it's interesting, I've had a couple of patients over the years that I typically have people take methylene blue in the morning because it's energizing.
Yeah, that's
typically
the only time I can take it.
Yeah, but some people actually do well taking it right before bed because as you just described, Sarah, like sleep is a huge energy demand. And then if they need it, they have additional support. But what I found to be more helpful for the majority of people is more GABAergic support. It's not more melatonin. You and I know a lot about melatonin. It's not everybody thinks it's going to be your sleep remedy. It's not, there's a lot of other ways to support melatonin production, which does go down as we age as well. But certainly the GABA system seems to be a better lever for most people to pull, which is because it's GABA that helps regulate your sleep cycles. It helps maintain sleep. It helps you fall asleep. And then I also like working on the adenosine system too. People don't.
Coffee.
Yes, exactly. So adenosine is a neurotransmitter that builds up throughout the day when we make more energy throughout the day. And then it gives us more sleep pressure. Coffee, caffeine specifically, blocks the adenosine receptor. And then that makes you feel more wakeful. So if you're on this sort of coffee, cycle where you're just going coffee, you're not going to get enough stimulation or not enough signal, to get you to fall asleep. So this is the people that can't fall asleep. They're drinking too much coffee. They're going up and down and crashing. What's your take on coffee at this point?
I still like to have my coffee every morning. I think I try to tell people to cut it off and have 1 cup if they need to really have coffee. 1 cup, cut it off by 9:30 in the morning if you can, because some people are slow metabolizers, some people are fast metabolizers, but overall, relying on coffee in that way and just drinking it throughout the day, which I have a lot of people that do that. They're drinking the coffee at 4 PM and they're like, oh, I sleep just fine. I'm like,
do you?
Do
you really? Yeah,
do you
really?
You think you do.
Yeah.
Because of those adenosine receptors, you are frying the whole system. So
yeah.
I know there's the caffeine blues book that is really interesting, and that whole thing of like how it's just a very serious drug and people should stay away from it. I personally didn't have any coffee when I was trying to get pregnant with my son. I didn't have coffee for like almost 3 years. And I do have to say, I did feel better without it overall. I did feel like my energy was more clean and more stable.
More stable. Yeah. The people feel, I mean, 1 cup or 2 cups of coffee, I find it for most people is okay. But certainly if they're cutting it off like later in the afternoon, like after the afternoon, I think it's a big one. You know, I remember like in 2019 or so, I think I had all my kids at that point. So there was like, I had 4 kids under 9 or something like that. And I was getting headaches and I thought I needed to drink more coffee. And I realized that I needed to stop coffee entirely because my nervous system was frying, right? And I didn't know, but then as soon as I came off the coffee, I started feeling like dramatically better. And so people don't realize this kind of creeps up on you because coffee, you know, there's tolerance, there's withdrawal to it, the headaches, you know, there's dependence on it, obviously, right? And then you're screwing up your adenosine system, but you're also screwing up some neurotransmitters like norepinephrine and epinephrine and even your cortisol, right? Which can increase as well using. So you have to be careful. But the nice thing is like, you know, coffee does also have polyphenols. So it's got polyphenols, it's got antioxidants. And so it's nice that it's got a little bit of both. So I'm cool with it, but I really try to, you know, regulate my patient's energy without those things as much as possible. I've been playing around. I don't know if you have any thoughts about this around with ketones a little bit too, Sarah. Like I know we talk about fasting and then fasting being stressful for people, right? Especially if they're in this sympathetic spiral of doom, which we've been talking about. I don't have my patients fast here, by the way.
No,
so I'm 100% with you that they need to be nourished and they need to have good caloric intake and they need to have good protein, all the things that I know you talk about. But and this is where I find a little bit of exogenous ketones, like at low doses in some of my patients, goes a long way helping with that brain function because it does work on the mitochondrial side of things. So I'm not typically recommending fasting,
right,
but I am recommending in some of my patients some exogenous ketones, and I've seen some benefit there. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I've used them at different times with my daughter. I have never really used them with myself. I have used them with clients as well. So I think they definitely can be valuable, especially because I don't want people in this, like we talked about in the very beginning, the sympathetic spiral. I think that the fasting can put them further into that.
For sure. I've seen it all the time.
Further dysregulation. Yeah, big time. I'm like, no skipping meals, stop worrying about it. You know, let's just not put that on the table right now. So yeah, I think they can be helpful. I haven't used them in a while, but I've used them at different times with my daughter and definitely with clients.
Yeah, there's this one that I really like. It's from Dominic D'Agostino, who's one of these researchers in the keto world for a long time. He and his wife has a company that I like, and it's just a little bit of ketones in the morning. I find can be helpful for just brain function, and it helps. And there's a little bit of salt as well, which can be helpful. Like when you're talking about minerals. So I find that with my patients can be helpful. So this is another thing for people to think about, right? When I'm not a big fan of fasting and when you're in this sympathetic spiral, because what I find it can happen is that if you're in like high ketosis, for example, that's a very stressful state. Think about this evolutionarily. If you're without food,
right,
this is stressful, right? Because you have to create all these hormones like the cortisol, the norepinephrine, epinephrine. They have to rise so that you can, get enough energy now to get that next meal. And so over the long term, there are some interesting studies on looking at ketosis and the GABAergic system and having actually a positive modulation on that, which is interesting. But in the short term, and especially if you're already GABA deficient, which is when many of our patients and clients are, I find that you really want to be careful there. But I've found that adding a little bit of ketones can be helpful as a way to get people off of coffee, especially actually, or as much coffee. A little bit of methylene blue can go a long way too, because it gives you more energy without the energy crashes as well. So you get the energy without feeling like you're going to crash at the end of it and need more. So methylene blue lasts for like 4 to 6 hours, and then it kind of goes down slowly, so it doesn't give you
smoothly.
Yes, it doesn't give you the crash, like as long as you're not, doing it IV, you don't need IV methylene blue for most anything unless you have like an acute infection or something like that. We have the troches, which you can just swallow, which is easy. I know there's a lot of liquids out there. I just kind of one sort of like PSA, public service announcement on methylene blue is that you have to be really careful about the quality. The liquids out there are typically not as potent as they say on the labels, and oftentimes contaminated, even if they don't say they are. We've tested a lot of them. And I just be careful of what you're buying. I'm a big fan of not buying any supplements at all on Amazon unless you're getting it from
their Amazon store.
Exactly. Like if you're getting it from the third party fulfillment. So like say, for example, Troscriptions is not on Amazon, but like Designs for Health, for example, I like their company. Like if you're going to get supplements from them, if they're third party fulfilled from Designs for Health, then do it, right? Or Microbiome Labs or whatever. Like I have a lot of good, or Quicksilver, for example, but
Healthy Gut is the one that I love, but and I'll tell people, if you want to get the Healthy Gut supplements and you want to use their money back guarantee, like you want to say, is this going to work for me or not? Then you're going to have to go directly to Healthy Gut, but they do have an Amazon store that's going to ship a heck of a lot faster, and it's the same exact thing. So you can't use the money back guarantee on Amazon. So that's a consideration. But I wouldn't just go getting any old thing off, like my Takasumi binder. I'm gonna buy that from Full Script. Like I'm not just gonna, I'm not gonna grab it off Amazon.
For sure. Yeah. The thing, I mean, what I always tell my patients is like, I use Full Script as well. But I always say, if you're going to buy something on Amazon that's, ingestible, it should not be from Amazon warehouses, because you just don't know what it is if it came from the warehouse. If it comes from the third-party seller, then you likely have a better chance of understanding where it came from and what the quality might be. And I think it's really important with methylene blue, especially because it's not a natural compound. It doesn't come from the ground. And so it's made in a lab, and it can be contaminated along the way. So yes, everybody, it is synthetic, but that doesn't mean everything synthetic is bad for us. I just want to be clear there, right? If you're diabetic and you're taking insulin right now, it's synthetic. If you go to the hospital and you need antibiotics, those are synthetic, so you didn't die. So there's reasons to use these things. And not everything natural, of course, is good for us, right? Like you can forage for the wrong mushrooms. Right,
exactly. That's the thing about the health community that I think gets so twisted, that's been on my last nerve lately, is that everything has to be all natural from the earth. I'm like, well, there's a lot of very poisonous things that are all natural from the earth that you don't want to ingest. We have to kind of reframe a little bit. I know and I understand, because I have personal experience with it, people being burned by our allopathic medical system, absolutely. But people also go over to this more holistic natural side and are getting burned almost an equal amount at this point, because it's becoming so much more popular. So just kind of vet things a little bit more, rather than saying it's holistic, it's natural, it must be good for me. There's always a nuance and a context that is important in everyone's situation, I think.
Just like granola is good for you, right? Because it's natural, right?
I'm gonna eat granola.
The granola. I mean, it's just like the classic, like I'm natural, like, and I eat granola, right? Because it's like, but packed with tons of sugar and tons of everything else, right? It's just like, it's a classic example of. But I get it. We're all, I think most of us, listening to your podcast, that come to see me, and they want to feel better. They want to, and they think that, and it's true, like being more natural minded is a good idea. I 100% agree with that. But I think there's a lot of nuances here, and like the challenge with, the social media, as you very well know, Sarah, just from, from all of the work that you've done and the flack that you've gotten over the years, it's everything's binary. Like, why does it have to be binary? Nothing is binary. Like it's everything is. So there's always a gray area here. Like, yes, we want to look back. How did we live ancestrally 15,000 years ago? That's great, but we don't, right? You talked about fluorescent lighting. You talked about, and we talked about processed food, and talk about, the air that we're breathing and the water that we're drinking, right? So
nothing is natural. I talk about this all the time. We want to have this idealized ancestral lifestyle, but we're not living in an ancestral world. We drive cars. That's not ancestral. We have cell phones. We don't know what's being sprayed in the skies. There's so many things that we are dealing with, our bodies are dealing with now, that they weren't in an ancestral time. So we always need to take a step back, and not to say we want to go as close to ancestral as we can with our food, with our light,
sure,
all these other things, and as natural as we can. But there's context to that conversation as well.
Yeah, Yeah, I think, and I just kind of follow on that, and maybe to round it out is like when it comes to the sympathetic spiral of doom, this is something that our ancestors wouldn't have had to deal with, right? Because they had acute exposures and they had and then they didn't have exposures, right? But there was also hypervigilance, and there's also, being potentially attacked by animals and things like where maybe days and weeks on end, like they had their sympathetic nervous system on board, right? And so we're able to do this as humans too, to some level, but until we don't, right? Right. Until we don't, right? And the thing is that we're not supposed to have 5 or 10 years of sympathetic activation where we're like, we're in like 80-20, 80% in sympathetic, 20% in parasympathetic. Our base state needs to be more parasympathetic. And then this goes along with everything. This belongs, if you want to exercise and work out better and gain more muscle, if you're in sympathetic all the time, you don't gain muscle. No, you don't do it because you don't gain any muscle in the gym. Right. You gain it when you're relaxing afterwards, right? This applies to everything. This applies to your meetings during the day. It applies to your family life. It applies to your, with your partners, everything, right? If you're in more of the parasympathetic mode more often, you're going to show up and do better at the things you want to. Your sympathetic nervous system decreases blood flow to the front of your brain. So you can't think as well, you can't remember as well, you can't remember, you can't sort of keep things in your mind either. And so the key here, I think, as we've been describing, is that it's a multifaceted operation here. It's not just decrease your nervous system stress. It's not just work on the mitochondria. It's both in a sequenced way. And so you can use things like a little bit of methylene blue if you need to, but there's low-hanging fruit, like you mentioned, Sarah, which I love, which is minerals, hydration, circadian rhythm, and dietary alignment with all that. And so if you can just do some, I think what I always tell my patients, and I'm sure you have thoughts, is like, what are the low-hanging fruit things that you can do now, right? Is it a supplement? Okay, let's do that, right? Is that what you need to start with? Like, is it starting with protein in the morning? Okay, great. Let's do that. Like whatever it is, whatever that low hanging fruit is, because once we can start making some inroads in that mitochondrial side of things, then I can be like, okay, where do we go from here? And then we can start coming down on the nervous system at the same time. And so you don't have that reactive anxiety that would happen. And you have enough mitochondrial support that when you're not in sort of clamped down tension mode, you can actually sort of flow in to this sort of new state where you're more parasympathetic more of the time.
Yeah. And I think that's the goal where we really want to get to, so we can get back to optimal health and healing. And I think it is possible. I reiterate with people all the time that are coming to me, they want to lose weight. I'm like, yes, we can, but we have to, your body isn't going to, if you're in this sympathetic place, I say you're in conservation mode. And I know the gym bros and the calorie people, no such thing as conservation mode. There's no such thing as starvation mode. Yes, your thyroid can downregulate. You can have low T3, you can have mitochondrial function slowing down as a result of your body thinking it's in danger and thinking you're going to die. So why would we turn on fertility? Why would we allow you to lose weight? We're already afraid you're going to die. Why we're going to let something go off your body? So I think it's so foundational for anyone who's trying to recover their health, feel better, to not skip the foundational stuff, to look at this stuff seriously.
Yeah. Low-hanging fruit is really important, and everybody's going to be different. I totally understand that. And as long as I find a place to engage, which I almost always do, and I think everybody listening can find a place where I think I could do that, right? I think I can do this one or two different things. It may not be move houses or change partners or change jobs or, put my kids in daycare. Like it might be something much smaller than that, but that's okay. And there's a book that I like about, how we create habits. And one of them, it's by Charles Duhigg. It's a pretty old book, but he talks about cornerstone habits, which is like once you start doing one thing, this one habit change, then everything else can kind of snowball from there, right? And so that's the way why it's called the cornerstone of a building, right? Like it's like the main place that everything kind of, the domino effect as it is. So I think that when I talk to my patients and I talk about this in general, I know it sounds ominous, this sympathetic spiral of doom, but if you can recognize this and know, okay, this is in some spectrum, this is where I am, right? Knowing that there are very there are ways to address this, and then you can start feeling better now or very soon. But and long term, you can really do some amazing things to recover your health, because that's the other thing amazing about this, this human meat suit that we wear, is that we're very, very significant capacity to heal and to recover and to really regain a lot of the things that we thought were impossible.
Right.
Some of this might not just be doing diet and lifestyle, might be optimizing, from your metabolites and your gut and doing genetic testing, maybe even. All that might be things that could be really helpful for you too, but all in context of where you're ready to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Well, I think this has been a really helpful conversation, and hopefully, again, just to kind of shed some light on this issue and maybe make people stop gaslighting themselves if they're struggling and they're like, I've tried this, I've tried that. I get the whole thing. I've tried everything. Nothing's working. Yeah. And sometimes it's not a matter of doing more and getting into more protocols and more testing and more supplements. It's a matter of pulling back. Right. And letting your body come out of this cell danger response. And that can be a process. It takes time.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect way to say it, sometimes it's a lot less than more. And this is the classic example I would kind of maybe give for those that are listening, is like, I think I need more stimulants to get through the day. It's actually, you probably need to calm down your nervous system to do it. Right. And it's also the mitochondria part that needs to be supported. So, but I find that if I can navigate that with patients, and that it really does have a huge just difference in their life and how they feel. So I think this is an important conversation, Sarah. I appreciate you letting me turn the mic on you and ask you some questions too, because I really do feel like you have a lot to offer here. And I think your platform is fantastic. And I hope that what I was able to do is just give a context of what, how I see this. I mean, I certainly have a company that makes products that can help in the short term, the Troscriptions company, which I know you support. We also have a nonprofit called Health Optimization Medicine and Practice that trains practitioners. You don't have to be licensed. So if you're a practitioner and you're looking to create a framework that uses testing like metabolite testing and gut testing, hormones, nutrients, and things like that as part of what you do, I think it's a great framework to how to think about things and how we reverse the notion of longevity to more health span and optimizing to our optimal ages, which was around 21 to 30 years of age, trying to get everybody within that network if we can. So you can check it out at homehope.org if people are interested as well. So.
Amazing. And I'll put all those links down in the show notes in case people are looking for more information. And I love these kinds of conversations. Thank you for coming on and chatting. And I think this will help a lot of people.
Thanks for having me again, Sarah. Good to see you.
Good to see you.